would go on the bottom. Because these are both unhappy, there's just going to be a 1 left on top. When there would be nothing, we can't write 0 because that would mean there was no question to begin with. We have to write a 1. And then these powers are going to go on the bottom. Now you might like to simplify this. The only thing we can do, I know what 3 squared is. That's just 3 times 3. And I can get my answer like that. Okay? Simplify the following. So when it says simplify, it does want you to go all that way. This question here is just a multiplying. When you multiply, you're going to be adding powers when the base is the same. The trick here that you've got 4 plus minus 8, that's just like saying it's 4 degrees outside, gets 8 degrees colder, you're going to have -4 as your power. Okay, so some solving. This tends to get people, it can be a lot of fun. You just got to make sure you set it out so you don't lose track and that you give yourself heaps of space. So if I'm trying to get m as the subject, that means I want m equals whatever the rest of the stuff is. So I need to make a couple of moves so that I can get m on its own. Like I was just saying, I'm going to give myself heaps of space. 5k equals n plus m. Yes, okay. So my first move, all right, because I'm trying to undo everything that's been done to m until it's just m equals. This 5k is causing these brackets. It's holding everything in because it's multiplying by that n plus m. I get rid of multiplying by doing the opposite thing. And if you have a calculator in front of you, the buttons are next to each other for their inverse operations. So to undo timesing, the button next to that is to divide. So I need to divide the other side by that 5k, and that's going to get rid of it from this right side. Now, that's not going to be an answer, and these aren't going to be very satisfying because we're going to be left with some pretty gross stuff. Just have some confidence that you're doing the right moves, and you'll be fine. So now I've got this n here, which I don't want. You can see that it's being added on. So to get rid of it, I need to take it away from the other side. So I'm going to write x on 5k, take away n. Note how I did that as its own thing. If I was to write that on the bottom, that's something very different. That would be dividing by 5k minus n, which is not what I did. I just subtracted it from that whole answer. And now I've got m equals. I'm done. What a lot of my year 12s like to do is they like to have m equals on the left side and then everything else on the right, just because we tend to read left to right. Totally not necessary, but if you find that a bit more comforting and easier to work with, go for it. Okay, this one is a little bit trickier because it's got some fractions involved. There's a ton of methods we could use here. I'm going to try and step through it. My method's going to take a few more steps than you could do. You could do it quite quickly, but hopefully I'm not going to do anything too advanced, so I shouldn't lose you. 2, was that it? Okay, so I'm trying to get x equals. So my issue here is that I've got, now you could choose whatever order you want to go in. I've got this n over 5. I'm just going to consider that like being a number, a thing that's like added on. And to get rid of an add, I'm just going to subtract that whole thing from the other side. So when I do that, I'm left with x over 2 equals 2 minus n over 5. And again, these aren't going to be satisfying. You need to get used to having really gross answers. Now, I want to get rid of this divide by 2. And again, how do I undo my dividing? That's going to be multiplying the other side by 2. Now, there's a bit of a trick here, though, because when I multiply that other side, I need to multiply everything on the other side. I can't just do a times 2 at the end because that's only sticking to that last thing. So I'll highlight it. We need to do all of that whole part, okay, the 2 and the minus. We do that by doing our 2 times and then putting in brackets. And we're done. That's our answer. You could simplify. If you wanted to expand those brackets, you would get 4 minus 2n on 5. Cool. Same thing. arguably, I think the factorized version there is actually nicer. And that's it. Just be careful with that timesing at the end. Okay, 19 might get a few people. The trick here is we're trying to get K. Straight away, you might realize, well, there's a K on top and the bottom. So there's two Ks, which is a little bit weird. Hopefully what you realize though, in getting this K on its own, the only move I can make is to get rid of that divide. I'm going to do that by timesing the other side by K minus 9. Again, whenever I'm timesing with like more than one term, I'm going to be using brackets. So if I was to multiply that whole left side by K minus 9, I'm going to need to put that two-parter in brackets, just like this. Now, when I do that, again, I've still got K in both bits, which is really tricky. So what I need to do is get like the K's together if I can. The only way I can see out of here is, well, what if I expand those brackets to get K on its own, just like this. And then I'm going to say, okay, well, I kind of want to get the K's onto the same side. So how do I get this RK, notice it's all positive, to the other side? Well, when it's just a thing that's positive, we're just going to take it away to get it on the other side. If I want to get rid of a negative, I would plus it onto the other side. But because I'm just getting rid of a thing, I'm going to subtract it from the other side. We're almost done. This is quite a gross one. It's quite tricky. It takes a lot of initiative to realize like what steps you actually need to do here. So if you miss this one, it's fine. It's quite a hard one. What we're going to do next, you'll notice I've got K in both parts. Now our next topic is all about factorizing. So if you haven't done that yet and you aren't too sure on it, then I assume you would struggle with this question, which is fine. What we're going to notice is that both of these terms have a K. That means that I can factorize out, in other words, like unexpand, by bringing or dividing that K out the front. If I divide this thing by K, I'm left with 1. And if I get rid of the K here, I'm left with R. One step left, we're almost done. This is now K times, okay? I want to get K by itself, so I need to divide by this whole 1 minus R. And that's my answer. I get K equals minus 9R on 1 minus R. Now, if that's something you aren't too sure on, feel free to skip that one. It is not the end of the world. Okay, this one here is actually quite easy. I'm not going to go through it. Don't get scared by the x squared. It's still just a thing. So if you want to get rid of that thing, literally just minus it across. The only trick with that 3y, when you're left with 3y equals blah, 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 is that is a 3 times a y. So to get y by itself, I'm going to need to divide the whole other side by 3. That's going to be my last move. 21 is just a kinetic energy formula. We're trying to get V squared as the subject, not V squared. It's actually a really nice, easy question. Heaps of ways you could do this. You could do it in one step. I'll do it in two for you just so I don't lose you. I'm going to get rid of the fraction first, that 1 over 2. Remember that when I divide by a fraction, that is the same thing as timesing by the reciprocal, which is 2 over 1, or just 2. So if I'm dividing this 1/2 across to the other side, that is the same thing as saying that's K times 2, or 2K equals mv squared. Now to get v squared on its own, all I have to do is get rid of that m. That m is timesing by the v squared, so I'm just going to divide by that m. And that's it. Okay, so look, you don't need to 100% this at all. Hopefully you can just do some basic equation solving, have the fraction rules kind of down, the adding, subtracting, timesing, dividing. And if your expanding skills are pretty good, wicked. If you have any problems with that maths-based task, just let me know. I'll help you out. and then we're going to work on factorizing next.